Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In our first story, the OP tried to pay the ground rent with tomatoes. Strange, isn't it? Considering how bland grocery store tomatoes are, they would have won out in that transaction. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Ground rent charge. I bought a house in Manchester, UK, which I thought was freehold, but turned out to have an ancient ground rent, sort of like a leasehold. This ground rent was a grand sum of 4 GBP per year. For the first few years, I received a hand-typed bill once per year as the ground rent was owned by an elderly lady. Presumably the ground rent was an old family asset. I paid the bill promptly by check. After all, it was only 4 GBP. Now I think the elderly lady died because for a while the charge was collected by the legal company in charge of her estate. However, the ground rent was then sold to a large company whose primary business was debt collection and who were aggressive about collecting the rent quarterly. Still, that was not really a problem, but I was annoyed enough at having to send 4 checks for $1.50 GBP per year to investigate further, with a view to purchasing the whole thing myself. I found out that, firstly, that all these ancient ground rents would be annulled in 2020 or somewhere around then, so there wasn't actually much to pay if I wanted to purchase the whole thing. I think it was like 80 GBP. I also found out that under the ancient law pertaining to these ground rents that I had to pay the fee or give them produce from the land to the value of the fee. I told you it was ancient. Additionally, the ground rent holder had to collect the rent, that is, at the door, in person. So next time the new company sent me the vaguely threatening bill, I simply sent them a letter offering produce from my garden to the value of the fee. I had some nice tomatoes at the time, so I offered them those, and left it to them to decide when they wished to collect. Of course, the company never came to collect any tomatoes and tried to get me to send the money to them and threaten legal action, etc. However, once I sent another letter to their legal guy pointing him to the law on the matter, I then received a one-off offer to buy the entire ground rent for 25 GBP, which I did. A good result, as I was completely happy with buying at the market price of 80 GBP. Excuse me, where's my change? What are you talking about? I gave you 3 tomatoes, rent is £4. You owe me 2 cherry tomatoes or 1 beet. Sorry, I only have 3 string beans and a radish. That'll do, thank you. And our second story. Alcoholic neighbor mistakes me for the Dandelion lady. I live next door to an alcoholic. We bought the house over 6 years ago. Nice neighborhood near downtown. House next door seemed to be under renovation. Still is. Anyway, long story short, neighbor has shown her butt too many times to count, and I've transitioned from sympathetic to get the F off my lawn, crazy lady. My lawn dude, that's his title in my phone, name, lawn dude. It keeps my life more simple to put where I know people from, so when they contact me, I can remember why I have them saved, i.e. Beverly, co-worker, etc. Anyway, lawn dude's at my house doing his lawn dude thing when crazy lady accosts him about dandelions. Says he needs to do something about it. Poor lawn dude. I told him to ignore her and stay away from her and just said to try and avoid her and I wouldn't recommend doing any work for her. He said, yes, she not seem okay. She smell like beer. English is a second language for lawn dude, but he gets his point across well. He asked me if he needs to do anything about the dandelions. I told him they are an issue, but I do not want to broadcast spray weed killer. Lymphoma, anyone? And I'll get a dandelion tool to deal with them. Yes, I have dandelions, so does most of the street, so does crazy neighbor. In her world, everyone else is responsible for her issues, so her dandelions are my fault. Side-eye across the piles of trash bags and household debris she has across her entire front lawn and driveway. Beginning of lockdown, I had a bit of time on my hands, no social obligations, limited patience, needed to be seen at work, so I got out my dandelion tool, TM, I'd bought and started to go, working my way from far side of my lawn away from crazy neighbor. It was drizzling that day, so I had on a baseball cap and my raincoat over my usual outside work attire, yoga pants and a t-shirt. This is roughly 3 weeks after lawn dude met neighbor. Now, here you have to understand I have a lot of interaction with this woman. We've sat together over dinner. I've sat on her porch. She's been in my house. She knows me, or she should. Granted, that was at the beginning before I had decided she was beyond my capabilities. So crazy neighbor drives into her driveway, and I'm bopping along and at a good pace, pulling out dandelions in my lawn with my earbuds in. I start to hear a shrill voice, so I look up and pull out my earbuds, and crazy neighbor is standing at the property line. She's been told to stay away, and asks me, "Are you the dandelion lady? Are you going to do my house next?" I'm like 10 feet from her lawn where she's standing. I said, "Crazy lady, I live here. This is my house I'm working on." She squints at me. "OP?" "Yes, crazy lady, it's me. And no, I'm not doing your lawn. Go inside. You don't want to talk to me." Earbuds go back into ears. I look down and continue my lawn. Yes, crazy neighbor is in my phone as name crazy neighbor. Tell her you're very pro-B and your dandelions are your humble offerings to their queen. And our next story. Old lady at the dollar store. So this happened about 7 or 8 years ago now, but it's a good story, so I think it fits perfectly here. So I worked at a retirement home as the head waiter for 9 years. I worked for way too long for not enough money, but I don't know, I just love those old folks. At this retirement home, there was a lady, we'll call her the warden, because she used to be a prison warden, and you could tell. Everything, and I mean everything, had to be her way or there would be hell to pay. Now this lady had a real bad rap for being rude to everyone because she thought she was in charge. She'd yell at management, other residents, and oh, my poor waitstaff. I remember when I turned 18, I got my first tattoo, an amazing rib piece I might add. Love you, Jess. The warden calls me over to her table after dinner and say, "So I heard you got a tattoo, OP." I replied, "Yes, I did, Mama." The warden say, "Well, let me see it then." So I show her, being the dumb 18-year-old kid. She looks me dead in the eye and says, "Well, OP, I hope it gets infected. I hope you never go to college, and I hope you die." Me, being a smart butt, just looked at her and said, "Aw, I love you too, warden." But now to the story. So I'm at the Dollar Tree just down the road from the home, back in the good old days at the Dollar Tree where everything only cost $1. Damn, extra 25 cents is BS. And I start walking down the aisle, and who do I see? The warden. I try to keep my head down, but it's too late. She's already noticed me. She starts yelling, "Oh, it's you." Well, help me get this off the shelf and carry my basket because none of these, insert derogatory term for black people here, are going to help me. I stop, look at her, and I'm like, she's just a crazy old lady with only hate keeping her alive, so I'll be nice and get the thing off the shelf for her. So I grab the item off the top shelf and say, "Here you go, warden." She looks at me, pushes her basket into me and says, "OP, I know unless you're gonna carry my stuff, not hand me something. You might be stupid as these, insert derogatory term for black people, but you don't have to act like them too." This is when I realize I'm not at work ATM. I look at her and say, "Warden, you know I don't work here. I don't have to do anything for you, and I sure as hell don't have to put up with your racism." Now I'm going to say it again. We're not at work, so unless you want to hear what I really think about you, I would just stop. She starts with, "But you do work for me." I look at her and say, "No, Mama, I work for the community you live in, and you don't treat people like we're a community, and honestly, if you keep treating people like this, I think they should throw you out. And then where will you go? Because we both know your daughter sure as hell won't let you live with her." She just looks shocked and says, "You, insert derogatory term for black people, P.S. I'm white, I'm going to tell your boss, and I'm going to have you fired." I just look at her and walk away. I continue to work there for another 7 years. She'd give me that bee face every day. It really made me feel good inside. P.S. That was just one bad apple. Most of the people there were a delight, and I love spending time with them. Not all old folks are terrible, evil people, but there are some out there. It takes a special person to do that kind of work. I could never do it. I know the families appreciate you. You know, the families that gave a care, that is. And our last story. My HOA will learn that I absolutely live by the letter of the law. My HOA recently changed the rules limiting the amount of vehicles allowed in my driveway. I collect cars, all of which run, drive, and are registered and insured, and my household also has 4 licensed drivers. When I moved in, the rules stated only 1 Class C vehicle allowed per driveway. Well, that was fine by me since Class C vehicles don't exist. Class C vehicles were not defined in the HOA rules either. I assume whoever wrote that rule assumed since they had a Class C license, standard cars and trucks must be Class C. So I moved in, and after stuffing 2 cars, 4 motorcycles, and my camper in my garage, I placed 5 vehicles in my driveway. The letters came. I was quickly able to deflate them after asking them for the legal definition of a Class C vehicle. No fines paid. Fast forward about a year, and the HOA proposed a rule change, now stating 3 vehicles per driveway maximum. Since 3 is more than 1 and people lack critical thinking skills, it was passed with over 85% support. Fine, 3 vehicles it is. I did some digging and found the streets in my HOA were turned over to the city, an effort to avoid having to foot the maintenance bill, I'm sure, and as such, the HOA had no authority to stop people from parking on a public street. So I moved 2 vehicles to my very narrow street, one in front of my house and one directly across the street in front of my neighbor's house. Now, the only vehicles that could safely drive past my home were motorcycles and the one guy with a smart car. It was glorious. My street's a main artery into and out of the neighborhood, lots of U-turns and backtracking for folks to get home or to work. They're the ones who did the rest of the work for me. Complaints and calls to the HOA president resulted in another rule change vote. Now my driveway is open to any amount of legally registered vehicles. It fits 9. I need more cars. Well, congrats on beating the HOA. I'm glad you aren't my neighbor. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.